Hello, and welcome to this month's GWI Trends webinar. This series of webinars will delve into a different topic each month to showcase what Global Web Index data can tell us about the latest digital trends and provide in-depth insights into the trends that are impacting the industry right now. My name is Phelim. I'm the Trends Manager at Global Web Index, and I'm here along with our Head of Customer Success, Ben, and our Senior Trends Analyst, Katie. We're here to present a special webinar on media consumption trends. Further GWI Trends webinars will take a broad look at particular topics, e-commerce, advertising engagement, or device usage, for example, or dig down into specific trends that are having a major impact on the digital world. Today we are focusing on media consumption because the shift from traditional to digital media is much discussed but rarely quantified. This webinar is all about analyzing how much time people are spending online, tracking the types of media they're consuming, and assessing the share of time spent on digital versus traditional forms of media, with a key focus on television and social media. We'll be presenting for about 20 minutes, and if you'd like to ask any questions as we go along, you can type them in the messaging box and Ben and Katie will respond. And I'll also be answering a few questions at the end of the webinar. I'm going to start by just being very clear about Global Web Index's research and the methodology behind all the figures I'll be presenting today. GWI is an audience profiling company, and along with many other products, we run the world's largest ongoing study on the digital consumer. Each year, we survey around 350,000 internet users age 16 to 64 in 40 markets around the world. We do this to investigate the digital lives of connected consumers, from their demographics, attitudes, and interests, to their online activities, social media usage, media consumption, and brand engagement. All the figures I present today will be taken from this research. It is self-reported data from internet users age 16 to 64. It's also important to understand exactly how we ask our respondents about how much time they spend on various forms of media each day. Our questions about media consumption vary slightly, but fundamentally they take this form. Roughly how many hours do you spend on doing the following each day? We ask respondents about a range of media. You can see the list on the left here. And we give them a selection of bands to choose from. So less than 30 minutes to an hour, and so on. Using these responses, we calculate an average time spent, which is a metric I'll be primarily discussing during this webinar, by assigning an average time to each response. So 1 to 2 hours becomes 1.5 hours, and so on. So let's start by looking at the global picture. Exactly how much time are internet users devoting to various types of media, whether digital or traditional? And we see that on a typical day, internet users estimate that they're now spending an average of almost 6.5 hours online. This means they're spending longer online than they are on linear TV, broadcast radio, games consoles, or print press combined. Now here we're including game consoles and offline media, but the reality is that it fits in both categories. And I'll just pause here to highlight the considerable chunk of daily media time that is devoted to linear TV, a testament to this form of entertainment's still retaining a central role within daily media portfolios, and a theme that we'll return to quite a bit during this webinar. But looking at the battle of digital and traditional media over time yields some interesting results. Each year, internet users are spending consistently longer on digital media, now devoting around 50 minutes longer to this in 2016 than they were in 2012. Yet crucially, over this same period, figures for traditional media have remained remarkably stable, taking about the same amount of daily time now as it did back in 2012. That's a key point to note. Despite constant claims that the internet is taking people away from other media formats, most of them are actually holding their own. If we focus in on online time, it's social media that is by far the most important. This captures about 2 hours each day, representing almost a third of time spent online. Online TV or streaming is now close to reaching the 1 hour per day mark, a figure which, as we'll explore later, reaches even higher amongst the youngest internet users and those in some fast growth markets. But it still has some distance to cover before it can become a real challenger to traditional broadcast TV. That said, there are signs of a change here, and as there are across all the activities that we are investigating. Since 2012, all of the specific online activities we track have seen increases in terms of the daily time devoted to them. But it's important to recognize the relatively slow nature of the rises. While their upward trajectories are clear to see, changes in digital consumption tend to take place more slowly than is sometimes supposed. Online radio and music has seen just a 4-minute increase, for example, while online press has similarly risen by only 9 minutes. Social networks and services set themselves apart here, capturing an additional 34 minutes per day than they did back in 2012. It's sometimes said that the social bubble has burst, but our data makes it clear that networkers are continuing to become even more deeply integrated inside daily behaviors. The shift to mobile is playing a vital role here, as is the incorporation of ever more activities within social platforms. Once again, though, we see the traditional forms of media are managing to hold their own as digital media strives forward. Although linear TV and broadcast radio are taking slightly less time than they were 4 years ago, figures can be subject to small year-on-year fluctuations, and neither of these decreases have been sizable. TV is a good example here. Internet users might now be devoting almost an hour to online TV and streaming, but they're still spending twice as long in front of their TV sets. When examining these figures, though, it's key to understand that many media activities are running in parallel to each other, with simultaneous multimedia consumption now the norm. Second, or dual screening, is crucial here. Over 85% of internet users report that they use another device to get online while they watch TV. And really, this is one of the key drivers behind online time, especially via mobile, continuing to increase each year. In terms of devices, mobiles are the clear favorite for second screening. Having overtaken once dominant laptops during 2013, they now have a 24-point lead in our research. Meanwhile, laptops and desktops have been posting year-on-year declines every year. In the years ahead, these second screening preferences will be another factor pushing online time on mobiles up even further, just as it will contribute to PCs and laptops losing further ground. As they second screen, internet users are most likely to be social networking. Given that chatting to friends also scores very highly here, we have some context for why people are spending so much of their daily time on social networks and messaging services. What's more, over 4 in 10 are reading the news while watching TV, again highlighting that many media activities are happening simultaneously rather than sequentially. What's particularly striking here is that all of the most popular second screen activities are rather informal in nature, in that they do not involve activities which automatically engage viewers with content being aired on the main screen. So really, rather than seeing the second screen as an additional place to drive viewer engagement, it should probably be viewed as a distraction. Yet, that around only 1 in 10 adult users are sharing TV-related views or interacting with related online content as they dual screen is certainly pretty significant. These trends also suggest that integrating second screen content with social networks is probably the best way to increase viewer awareness. Now, as I've mentioned, one of the driving factors behind all these shifts among specific activities has been the rise of the mobile internet. Smartphone ownership is now almost universal among the internet population, and digital consumers are now most likely to say that a smartphone is their most important device. And if we look at time spent online via mobiles versus all other devices, we can see clearly that the overall increases in internet consumption we are seeing are really being driven by progressively heavier usage of mobiles. Devices which have jumped from just 1 hour 70 minutes back in 2012 to 2.5 hours in 2016. In fact, over the last few years, time spent on PCs, laptops, and tablets has decreased. And the trend here is pretty clear. It won't be too long until we see more time spent online via mobiles than any other devices. And as we'll see, younger consumers and internet users in some emerging markets have already hit this mobile tipping point. So let's delve a little deeper and look at how media consumption differs across the age groups. As might be expected, 16-34s are spending the most time on media, with this age group engaging with the internet, TV, radio, press, and gaming for over 11 hours per day, but much of this time taking place concurrently, obviously. 25-34s in particular stand out here, spending almost an hour longer consuming media than their older counterparts. There are important age-based patterns when it comes to activities which make up this time. Pretty striking is the 16-24s are devoting the smallest amount of time to both linear TV and broadcast radio, with engagement with both increasing in line with age. In fact, 55-64s are watching linear TV for about twice as long as 16-24s. The other clear difference we see is the importance of online to 16-24s. On a typical day, the youngest online adults are online for 2.5 hours longer than their 55-64-year-old counterparts. As a result, it's unsurprising that younger age groups tend to be ahead for the specific online activities tracked in our charts. If we focus on TV, you can see the 16-34s are at the forefront of the shift online. And online TV and streaming has become a key part of their daily television consumption. They're the one group to be watching more than an hour per day, though 35-44s are on the verge of this landmark too. And taking a look at TV consumption over time yields some interesting results. Particularly striking is that while linear TV has seen gentle declines across each of the age groups, we've seen online TV record only small increases. Now, the direction of the trend here are pretty plain to see. But it will be some time until we see online TV overtake traditional. It's not simply the case that there's a direct or clear-cut shift from traditional to online formats. In reality, changes are much more complex and nuanced than that. However, there is one area where the increase has been clear and rapid, and that's social media. With each year that passes, we see more and more daily online time devoted to social services, with over 2 hours now being spent on social media per day. And we see this growth across all the different age groups. 16-24s may be at the forefront of this trend, but even among 55-64s, we're seeing figures rise. As I mentioned earlier, the rise of mobiles has been a key factor in the rise of time spent online and consuming digital media. And crucially, this is a trend that holds true across all the age groups. Now, the scale and speed of those increases may vary dramatically. Amongst 25-34s, for example, mobile internet usage has doubled since 2012 to hit the 3-hour per day mark. 16-24s and 35-44s have also seen pretty big increases here, with the former spending the longest of all on their mobiles, about 3 hours, 15 minutes. In contrast, for 55-64s, the figure has risen to a much more modest 58 minutes, though this still is more than 2 times higher than it was in 2012. In terms of percentages, mobiles now account for almost half of total internet time among 16-24s. If the prevailing trends continue, that means that we should see mobiles reaching parity with PCs and laptops amongst this group fairly soon. And it's when you examine the market-specific data where you see this trend really stand out. So when we look at the share of online time that mobiles are capturing each day, in most emerging markets, mobiles are now capturing 40 or 50% of online time, meaning these countries are close to reaching the mobile tipping point, the point where internet users are spending longer online on their mobiles than at all their devices combined. In fact, consumers are already mobile first in Saudi Arabia. This just emphasizes the primacy of smartphones in emerging markets. In this case, and across a range of other metrics, mobiles are shown to be the central devices to the digital lives of consumers in emerging markets. And finally, I'm just going to take a quick look at the state of TV engagement across the globe. And here we again see the enduring importance of traditional linear TV. Of all the 31 markets where we can compare linear TV consumption in 2012 to 2016, daily viewing has declined in 29 of them. But across most markets, these declines have been pretty gentle. This offers further evidence that linear behaviors are not being cast aside. And it's important to recognize that it remains by far the most important media activity overall. All this acknowledged, the overall trend is a decline in traditional TV and a rise in online forms of TV. In fact, there's been a 70% or more increase in time spent online on TV in Australia, Germany, Netherlands, Philippines, Saudi Arabia, South Africa, the UK, and the USA. So what countries are the most enthusiastic consumers of TV content? Well, the USA, France, and Argentina stand out for linear TV. Every day they spend over 2 hours longer watching this than online TV. Though interestingly, the USA is one of the leading watchers of online TV, but it's also one of the markets where we see the greatest disparity. There's over a 2-hour difference between the two forms. On the other end of the spectrum, it's in China where we see the closest gap between online TV and linear TV. Other emerging markets are also close to this landmark. And I think it's certainly telling that it's in emerging markets where we're closest to seeing online TV close the gap with broadcast. So thanks for listening, everyone. If you want to find out more about media consumption, our clients can download our new report, Digital versus Traditional Media Consumption, from our Pro platform, but everyone will also get a free copy of this report in the follow-up email that we'll send out quite shortly. We're going to stick around for another 5 minutes or so to answer some questions. If you think of anything later, though, feel free to tweet me or send me an email. My details are up now. And you can always find out more about Global Web Index from our website, globalwebindex.net, which has details about other products like our custom research offerings and our GWIQ analytics solution for audience validation and advertising effectiveness studies, and our new data on engagement with specific brands. So let's answer some questions if we have a few here. This might take a moment. Okay, thanks everyone. I think we're going to leave it at that, but as I mentioned, if there's any questions, feel free to email in.